First of all, I'm Representative Patrick Garofalo. That's spelled Garofalo. I'm a Republican state representative from Farmington. And again, Garofalo, the vowels go AO. Good morning, and thanks for being here to have our response to Governor Dayton's address. First of all, what I would say is that we all knew that the Democrat Party was being taken over by the resistance. We just didn't know it was being taken over by a resistance to mathematics and facts. The reality is the governor's own administration and his documents, not Governor Garofalo's administration, although that would be pretty cool if it was, the Governor Dayton's administration says this is a tax increase. And this is nothing new. There's nothing exciting about this. Once again, we see that whether it's the street, your seat, your heat, or your feet, Democrats want to raise your taxes. And so what we see here is an attempt to hold tax relief for Minnesotans in the form of tax conformity hostage at the expense of a huge, colossal tax increase on health care. And so if it's not a tax increase, as the Democrats are saying it is, then drop the proposal. Don't hold tax conformity hostage for this tax increase on health care. And so as we're going forward, I remain optimistic this administration will be able to work with both the Republican House and the Republican Senate on making sure we get true conformity passed for all the taxpayers in Minnesota. But I would just give a little bit of sound advice to the governor. The only way it's not going to happen is if he continues to criticize those who oppose his tax increases as lacking integrity. That's not helpful to the process, and the reality is this House and this Senate, we're going to put a tax conformity bill on his desk, and it'd be better if he worked with us instead of against us. Those are my comments, and I'm happy to take any questions.
How soon until we see your plan?
The question was, how soon until we see the House Republican plan? I would expect you'd see it by, if not this weekend, early next week.
Has it been difficult for Republicans as well to get tax conformity that holds as many people as possible harmless?
It's never difficult to cut taxes for people. It's as Republican as mom, baseball, and apple pie, so I don't think so at all.
But why is it taking so long?
Well, again, we just got the governor's proposal this week. There had been talking points about a month ago, but we just got his proposal this week. And in fact, the Health and Human Services bill, despite all the press conferences, the posturing, we still don't have that bill. There still is no bill on Health and Human Services and the governor's plan for a tax increase on health care.
You can do your own proposal without waiting for his.
But certainly we do depend upon the Department of Revenue, and we do depend upon the executive branch for a lot of fiscal data and information. Like I said, Tom, I think it's a pretty good guess as you'll see it this weekend or early next week.
What do you want to do with the provider tax? You've mentioned that numerous times here. What do you want to do with it?
We want to follow current law, which is get rid of it. I mean, this is one of the few states in the country that has a tax on people getting sick. It's a bad idea. It's currently in law. We don't need to do anything. And at a minimum, if people want to advocate for raising that tax increase, then just drop it now so we can focus on conformity. There's no reason to hold the tax conformity process hostage in exchange for increasing the sick tax.
And you get rid of Medicare at the same time?
Well, again, those are separate conversations, but why hold tax conformity hostage for a tax increase? It just doesn't make any sense.
Is this the usual garden variety kind of breakdown before a breakthrough, or is this a bit different?
I don't know if I would call this a breakdown because it's April. But again, I believe that we're going to be able to work with this administration and get things done. I just don't understand why, particularly in an election year, the Democrats are all circling around a tax increase on the sick. I just don't. It makes no sense to me.
But is the rhetoric hurting or helping right now?
Well, I would always say it's easier to compromise sooner rather than later, but it makes it difficult when the chief executive is accusing anyone who disagrees with him of lacking integrity. How do you get things done when someone views you as fundamentally immoral or a liar? It just doesn't make it easier.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that you're saying that you need to keep the conformity from the health care issue separately. And Minnesotans are going to want to know what are Republicans' intent on Minnesota care, not just, oops, 2 years from now it's gone. Okay, I think you would agree that you would owe Minnesotans an answer on what you plan to do on Minnesota care. So would you answer that?
So to be clear, the sick tax expires at the end of 2019, okay? So what we should do is we should take care of the problems we need to address now. Once we address those, then we should move on to the issues beyond that. Right now, there's an urgent need to conform Minnesota tax code to federal tax code policy. There's an urgent need from a regulatory, a cost perspective. The administration's got a lot of work to do to avoid a MNLARS, MNSURE technology disaster on this issue. We need it done sooner rather than later. On the MinCare issue, the Minnesota Care issue, raising taxes on the sick tax, that's stuff that can all wait till 2019. Let the campaign play out, let people do it. There's no need right now to have that 2019 issue hold up tax conformity for Minnesotans. It's contentious.
It may play out in 2019 or 2020, but decisions that you take now will have ramifications and will set the course for MinCare. So the question is, what do Republicans plan on doing there?
Well, I'll say the governor's words best. He said his administration doesn't need anything. So by definition, his words. So, no, I mean, I think we need to do the right thing for the taxpayers in Minnesota. It's not about what Republicans or legislators or Democrats in the legislature need. This is about doing what's right for the state. Tax conformity is good for business. It's good for employees. There's no reason to hold the state hostage for this 2019 tax increase. If we do nothing on MinSure or MinCare, nothing changes between now and the next legislative session. So,
as you say, set aside the provider tax. What do you think of the rest? Set aside the provider tax, because you say there's no need to do it. What do you think of the rest of his proposal?
So again, setting aside the provider tax from this is like me saying, well, besides the weight gain, what do you think of chocolate as a dietary supplement, right? You can't really separate them. This is a tax proposal. And I take a look at this and...
That's what you're asking him to do. You'd like him to...
Yeah, just set it aside and get rid of it. So once we do that, I think that, first of all, the governor said this, and I'll emphasize this, the change to the federally defined adjusted gross income, that's a very good change that it appears both sides have agreed to. And that's really good news for Minnesotans. Clearly, we want to make sure that the dependent deduction that's in statute right now, that we retain that so there's not a tax increase for large families. So those are things we can work on. But this silliness about the provider tax and making sure that every cafe in Minnesota pays higher property taxes, I mean, what does that have to do with conformity? Every small business in Minnesota is going to have to pay higher property taxes on autopilot so we can get conformity? We don't understand it. It's confusing. It muddles the process. And again, we should not have taxpayers and tax conformity being held hostage because people want to go out and jack up taxes on every cafe in rural Minnesota and raise the sick tax. It defies logic.
Repeal the...
I can't hear you, Pat. You got to talk louder.
Louder than I do?
Yeah, louder than
I
yeah.
normally do? Why not repeal the sick tax, as you call it, now? Why not repeal it early, take it off the table?
Well,
Are you willing to do that?
I mean, if the governor wants to suggest we get rid of that tax increase, if we get rid of that earlier, that'd be great. No, in current law, hold on. Okay, so the question again, Pat?
Why not repeal it, or why not repeal the sick tax early?
Because what that's going to do, that's going to add complexity to an already complex tax discussion on tax conformity. There's lots of ideas that I have and Republicans have about lowering taxes for Minnesotans, but conforming to the federal tax code is an exceptionally complex process. We need to be focusing on simplicity in getting this job done, not making it more complicated or trying to score political points against each other. Let's let that 2019 issue play out in 2019. For now, let's get tax conformity passed, let's get it done, and let's get the job done to take care of the businesses and employees of the state of Minnesota.
Speaking of House, doesn't the House need this more than the Senate? Do you need this in November?
You know, we got a pretty large majority, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, so no. But the reality is, rather than focusing on the who's up and who's down of who's running for what office, why don't we just do the right thing and just demonstrate to Minnesotans that we can get our job done?
But might Minnesotans have some words at the door when you're door knocking if you don't do something about taxes?
This politics of obstruction, kind of like deliberately throwing mud into the gears to slow things down. This is something that some DFLers tried to do in 2016 by taking down the bonding bill so they could get a choo-choo train. Now we'll just ask them, how'd that work for you? I mean, how'd that work out for you guys? Going out there and throwing sand in the gears saying, well, we're not going to get a train, so therefore there's not going to be any new roads funding, we're not going to pass a comprehensive bonding bill. How'd that work out for the DFL? And my guess is if they follow that similar route here, they're going to get their fanny kicked even worse than they did in 2016.
What are the House Republicans' broad principles on getting to conformity?
Simplicity, cut taxes, and make sure that the benefits that are in the federal bill pass down to the families and businesses of Minnesota.
So, can you promise? That's not a good word, but
Are
there going to be tax payers who are going to pay more under your plan?
Well, I think what's fair to say is that this is an exceptionally complex bill. So you have, if we were just to fully conform with the federal tax code, I mean, everything that it used to be, we would end up with a tax code, as Speaker Dowd has referred to, as a phone book. So I don't think we want that. At the same time frame, we want to put as much money as we can into tax relief. An important part of this is how much of the budget surplus we're able to use towards conformity. And again, this is something that the governor and Republicans are going to have to work out. But clearly, the more tax relief we're able to put into conformity, the more taxpayers we're going to be able to benefit. It's just a simple premise of mathematics.
Do you believe that conformity needs to happen this year, or is this something that, as some Republicans have suggested, can wait until January?
I don't think it needs to happen, but it really should. Right? We should do this. I don't see any benefit to waiting on this issue, unlike other issues. Other questions?
So have you heard from providers and the hospitals about? Have you heard from providers in the hospitals about the provider tax? I mean, are they anxious to see it sunsetted?
Well, I think people understand that this is something that's going to happen in over 18 months from now. So cross that bridge when we get to it. But why not deal with the issues that are at hand right now, which is tax conformity?
Are you hearing from the governor that he's not willing to separate those? I think he said in there that he's not expecting the provider tax issue to be advanced in the House. That, I mean, are you guys want it in the mix because it makes a better rhetorical point, or are you guys thinking that he's not going to move?
I mean, this is a tax provision. Tax provisions go in tax bills. Tax bills is what we're talking about, the tax conformity bill.
Like he just said in there, he doesn't expect it to be part of the equation.
Then why is he offering it? So, thanks everyone. Good to see everyone.